Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation. My name is Asia, and I'm a neuroscience intern and a recent graduate from the University of Notre Dame.
Hi, everyone. I'm also a neuroscience intern. My name is Karina, and I am a current student at Notre Dame studying neuroscience and theology.
And today we're giving a presentation on self-healing community, specifically on a model that focuses on the coalition as one that is strengths-based and trauma-informed in order to help build protective factors and resilience. Before we take a look specifically at the model, though, we want to start with this idea of our hope. What is the goal of our coalition? And it is to teach everyone in our community to take care of themselves and each other in a way that prioritizes caring for the nervous system. This idea that our nervous system has certain expectations for how it should be cared for. And so we want to target how we think about creating community and culture change to care for the nervous system.
So how do we do that? How do we get there? How do we reach our goal? And so this is a model that elevates how to build a self-healing community. So at the center, at the core of a self-healing community is strength-based. So we recognize that every single person in the community has something to give, has a strength to contribute, and their efforts matter. And so when we recognize this, then everything else can build off of that. And so the next goal is to form a trauma-informed community where all organizations and sectors understand how trauma affects the brain and the body, and they themselves are responding in a way that honors their knowledge of trauma. And with that, when we have trauma-informed organizations, then we have an increased number of protective factors, these positive relationships and environments which help regulate and buffer the effects of stress on the body and the brain. And with that, we build resilience. And so we build a resilient community in which people are able to move forward, they're able to respond to the stress in their life, and they're able to have agency.
Perfect. So in this video, we're going to take the time to break down each one of those circles and what they actually mean so that we're not just throwing words at you. So let's begin with strengths-based. Karina emphasized this, but there's an important reason for why this is the core of all of these circles. It's because we already have these existing strengths and resources in our community. That's you, the individuals who build us up and know the community, know how it functions, and have great ideas for how we can make change. So when we build on these strengths, we can think differently about creating community change. And one way to do so is pulling out our meta leaders. These are the individuals who are able to identify and draw out the strengths of the organization that already exists in our community. This framework is empowering because it helps to build a sense of agency within our community. Once we recognize that we have what we need, it's really just about using it and really prioritizing those individuals in our community, people just like you who have the expertise and the knowledge to help push this work forward.
So then, once we're elevating the strength that our community has, then we move into trying to get all organizations and sectors trauma informed. So what is trauma informed? It's a long-term goal for an organization when they decide to address how adverse childhood experiences and trauma affect the people that they work with, and they're working towards building resilience in their population. And this journey is long and it's iterative, so you might take a few steps forward and a few steps backwards, and you are definitely going to have to keep reevaluating your efforts, but it is a mission that is super important for all organizations to try to attempt at least. And so there are 4 different stages of trauma-informed care. And with this image is a little bit misleading because it's a straight line, but as I just said, it's not a straight line. You might have to take a few steps back. You might have to circle around a few times, take a few steps forward. And so, yes, it's not a straight line. It is a journey, and that's kind of the beauty of it. But the first step is being trauma aware. So your staff and leadership understand that trauma is a thing. It affects the brain and the body. They understand that, yeah, they understand it at a conceptual level, and they're able to explain it. And so they might have some training, ACEs training or trauma informed training, but they haven't yet internalized it. And so that's when we move to trauma sensitive. That's when individuals within the organization, so individual staff members, understand, wait, whoa, trauma does affect the human person. It affects the people I serve, it affects me. And they themselves are starting the journey of changing the ways they show up for themselves and for the population they serve. So it might be showing a little bit more empathy for their patients, or showing a little bit more patience with themselves. And so with that, when we have individual members of the organization trying to internalize, make it personal, the trauma, the knowledge that they just received on trauma, then we can move into trauma responsive. So that's when collectively all these individuals come together and say, hey, we want to change our organization. We want our organization to respond to the population in the ways that we learned about trauma. So honor all this new knowledge they have, all this new training they have pertaining to trauma resilience healing. And so they develop a work plan of action. So their policies, their mission statement, everything now is shifting in a way that, that elevates this new knowledge that they have. And then with that, we reach the goal of becoming trauma informed. So now the organization as a whole has this huge culture shift where they're building an environment for themselves and for the people that they serve that's safe, trustworthy, welcoming, loving, empowering, and is really facilitating an environment of resilience.
And on our journey towards becoming trauma informed, our next circle tells us that we're hoping that protective factors are a critical part of this work. Protective factors. So these are those individual and environmental characteristics and other items that help to reduce the effects of stressful life events. Protective factors are important for multiple reasons. First, they help us to calm down a nervous system that encounters stressors so that our brain is able to continue functioning, learning, and developing in the way that it's used to. Then protective factors can also provide a counterbalance to adversity. So we think about risk factors, those things that may lead to negative outcomes for our health. Protective factors help to buffer those and really are on that opposite end of the seesaw. In doing so, it helps us to foster resilience, which is something that we'll talk about later. But again, our ability to face stressors. And then lastly, protective factors can increase our ability to avoid future risks. But again, pertaining back to resilience, it can help us when we do encounter those risks to reduce their effects. And so more about the specifics of protective factors. One point that I really want to emphasize is that these factors give our nervous system the chance to thrive by encouraging certain brain activity and building up our brain architecture in a way that helps it to regulate stress throughout our life course. So a couple of specific protective factors that we like to focus on here. The first is nurturing and attachment. So this is thinking about the family environment and really giving children and parents the love and respect that they deserve. Next is so important to our coalition, the knowledge of child development. So truly giving families those resources that help them understand development, especially how that pertains to the nervous system and kind of the neuroscience research surrounding positive child development. The hope is that this information encourages us to reflect just more deeply on our behaviors and how we think about children. Parental resilience. So this is ensuring that families have the tools necessary to allow them to face the everyday stress that we face within our households. In the next column here, we start off with supportive social connections, the idea that, we all need help, and that it's important that everyone has a network of support that they can lean on. Then we have access to community supports. So these are those concrete supports that are just necessary to live. So when you think of healthcare, food and shelter, access to mental health care, so those resources that the community can help us tune into. And then lastly, social and emotional competence of children. Families being able to help children communicate and just develop a competence in how they communicate with their peers and with other individuals in the world is super important, and also in how they regulate their stress.
So then we build resilience. So what is resilience? We keep using this term throughout the whole presentation, but resilience is the ability to respond to challenges and hardships and issues in a way that doesn't let them dominate us. And so they're sustainable, they're effective, and it allows us to move forward from whatever we endure. And so there's this misconception that resilience arises in the absence of stress, but we can only practice resilience in the presence of stress. And so when we have a healthy amount of stress, resilience is the ability to regulate from whatever stressor it is. And so after we keep practicing this with relationship to help us buffer, we increase our capacity for resilience, and then we can keep practicing it when more things come our way. And so by building resilience at an individual level, then we can build resilience at a community level.
Beautiful. And with that, we've come to the close of our presentation. Thank you so much for giving us your attention and just for taking the time to go through this model of thinking about self-healing communities.
You matter. You're helping build the self-healing communities. So thank you.
Bye.
Bye.